All right, so you wanted to understand Hegel better.
Specifically, his phenomenology of spirit.
And yeah, this book, it's known for being a bit of a brain twister, even for like serious philosophy fans.
Definitely a challenge.
And so to help us unpack it all, we're bringing in some, philosophical heavy hitters.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Imagine like Socrates,
Okay.
Joe Rogan, Kanye West,
Oh, wow.
and Nietzsche all in a room together debating.
Whether the phenomenology is
Yeah, like, is this a real roadmap to like ultimate truth?
the big questions,
Or is it just a super, super complex mind maze?
right to the heart of it, yeah.
So before our philosophical guests show up, let's do a super quick, like, Hegel 101.
Okay.
What's his central idea?
Well, it all revolves around this concept of Geist.
Zeitgeist.
Yeah, often translated as spirit.
Okay.
And he believed that everything, the world, history, you name it, is driven by this Geist, which is constantly like evolving through conflict. And history for Hegel is actually the process of this spirit becoming self-aware.
So it's like the universe is like waking up to itself.
Exactly.
And we're all like part of this massive story.
We're all in the story.
So how does the phenomenology of spirit fit into all of this?
Well, the phenomenology is basically a journey of consciousness.
Okay.
It traces how we understand the world, how our own Geist evolves through these different stages, starting from, basic awareness and going all the way to what Hegel calls absolute knowledge.
And the tool for this, or like the engine that makes this evolution happen, is Hegel's famous dialectic.
Right.
Antithesis.
Synthesis.
Sounds simple, but it's a pretty profound idea.
Oh, absolutely.
So can you just quickly break it down for us?
Sure. It describes this process where ideas, they clash, they contradict,
Okay.
and through this struggle, they actually resolve into something completely new.
Okay.
So imagine these two opposing forces.
Thesis and antithesis.
Exactly.
Coming together.
Creating tension, bam.
And synthesis.
A synthesis.
Which takes elements from both.
Okay.
But goes beyond their limits.
So it's like a constant, like, intellectual refinement.
Evolution.
Evolution, yeah.
Yeah?
It's almost like a dance.
It is like a dance.
I've heard that before.
It's a really complex, intellectually rigorous dance.
Okay.
Where the steps are ideas, and every new move is a deeper understanding of reality.
Love that image. Very visual.
Yeah.
But being honest, sometimes these dialectical dances, they feel more like, awkward stumbles.
I could see that.
You end up with, like, a confusing jumble instead of some grand synthesis.
Yeah.
And this is where I could see someone like Socrates, jumping into the conversation.
Oh, for sure.
Being the master of asking questions.
The ultimate questioner.
He wouldn't just accept Hegel's dialectic, without pushing back a bit.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I can almost hear him saying,
Yeah.
now, Hegel, this synthesis you talk about.
You claim it brings us closer to truth.
Uh-huh.
But isn't it just a fancy way of saying compromise?
Right.
Does it really lead us to a deeper understanding?
Yeah.
Or just kind of this muddled middle ground?
It's a good point. Because think about all those arguments we have, that sort of fizzle out without a clear answer.
They just fade away.
Did the truth, like, get lost along the way?
Yeah.
And this is something you, as a listener, can think about, too.
In your own life.
Have you ever had, like, an argument that ended in a compromise,
Okay.
but it didn't really satisfy anyone?
It just felt kind of meh.
Does that actually bring us closer to the truth?
Or we...
Or are we just
Okay.
sweeping the real issues under the rug?
You're right.
Now, Hegel would probably say
He would say.
it's all part of the process, that even these clashes that seem unproductive, they're still part of the evolution of the Geist.
It all feed into it.
And that's where Hegel's concept of right comes in.
Yes.
And he talks more about this in his philosophy of right.
Yeah.
What's he saying there?
He's arguing that the abstract idea of good is replaced by the concept of right.
So right is more like concrete.
Yeah, grounded in the actual laws and institutions of society.
Not some like lofty, unreachable ideal.
It's about how freedom actually works in the real world,
Okay.
in the structures of the state, and how we interact with each other as citizens.
This is where Hegel might start to sound a little controversial, I think.
A little bit.
He sees the state as like the highest form of ethical life.
The culmination of the Geist's journey.
Hold on. the state is the ultimate achievement of the universe.
That's a big claim, right?
That's a big claim, even for Hegel.
Even for Hegel.
I can already imagine how Joe Rogan would react to this.
Oh, yeah.
He'd be blown away by just how cosmic Hegel's thinking is.
Oh, totally.
Joe loves exploring consciousness.
He does.
And here's Hegel connecting individual consciousness to the evolution of, like, the whole universe.
And the state is at the very top of that process.
Whoa, dude moment, for sure.
Yeah.
But, okay, seriously, this idea that the state is the highest form of ethical life, we need to unpack that a little bit.
We do. It's important to understand that Hegel's view of the state, it's not about blind obedience.
Okay.
He thought that individuals can actually find true freedom by participating in a rational and just political order.
So it's not about the state controlling us,
No.
but about us as individuals creating a state that reflects, like, our best values.
You got it.
And it's not just some vague idea of good guiding this process,
It's the concept of...
which is, like, embodied in the laws.
Exactly. Embodied in the laws and institutions.
Hegel even compares the state to a living organism.
It does. He does. Different parts working together for a higher purpose.
I remember reading about this.
In the additions to his philosophy of right, paragraph 263, he compares the state to the nervous system.
The nervous system.
The nervous system.
So different functions of the state,
Like the government branches.
or like different parts of the nervous system, working together to, like, keep the body politic alive and well.
That's it.
Such a vivid image.
Hegel's great at that, finding these connections between things that seem totally unrelated. He saw this universal logic playing out everywhere,
Okay.
from, the individual mind to the workings of the state.
But even with this idea of a rational state, I'm thinking about someone like Kanye West,
Okay.
with his huge sense of self. I bet he'd just declare himself like the embodiment of Hegel's absolute idea.
Oh my gosh, Kanye as like the ultimate endpoint of the Geist's journey.
Yeah, like he's reached the peak.
That's hilarious.
It's funny, but it does highlight like a common misunderstanding of Hegel.
Yeah, it is.
The absolute idea isn't actually a person, is it?
No, it's not about a specific person.
Okay.
It's this state of complete and total understanding.
So more of a state of being.
Yeah, a combination of knowledge, of understanding,
Right.
not a particular person who embodies it.
And that goes back to Hegel's view of history, right?
Yeah.
It does.
It's not about individual achievement,
No, it's about the unfolding of the Geist.
like this collective spirit.
Yes, over time.
We all contribute.
We all play a part.
But no one person is like, the absolute idea.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling someone like Nietzsche wouldn't be too thrilled with this whole system.
I can see that.
He was all about embracing that raw energy of life.
That chaotic energy.
Yeah, and I think he'd probably call Hegel out for being,
Too rational.
too rational, like burying the vital forces of life under all this abstract thinking.
I think you're right. He would challenge that emphasis on just reason and logic.
Yeah.
He'd say that Hegel's big rational system, it overlooks the irrational parts of life.
Right, like our instincts.
Yeah, the will to power.
The things that really drive us.
Exactly.
I bet he'd say something like, Hegel, your Geist is just a fancy word for a system that, crushes the individual spirit.
Oh, I can totally hear him saying that. He might even bring up that quote from Hegel,
Which one?
the one in paragraph 258 of the Philosophy of Right editions,
Oh, yeah.
where he says, the march of God in the world, that is what the state is.
That's a bold statement.
That's a bit too deterministic for Nietzsche, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Like it reduces the state to the march of God
Yeah.
and ignores all the messy, unpredictable, often irrational forces that shape us and societies.
He wouldn't like that.
And it brings up a really good question for all of us. Do you think there's room for both reason and passion in understanding the world?
Or does one have to win out?
It's a big question.
It is, and it's one that we'll keep grappling with as we dive deeper into Hegel's phenomenology of spirit.
It's clear that we've only just scratched the surface here.
Oh, yeah. Even with our special guests, we've got a lot more to uncover.
Definitely a lot more to come.
A lot more to come. Welcome back to our deep dive into the mind of Hegel.
It's been a wild ride so far.
It has.
Especially, with this tension between Hegel's focus on reason and Nietzsche's call to, embrace the raw energy of life.
Those two really butting heads.
So where do we even go from here?
Well, it leads us to another really interesting part of Hegel's philosophy.
Okay.
His concept of freedom.
Freedom. Okay.
You might think, freedom is just about doing whatever you want whenever you want.
Yeah, that's what I think of.
No rules, no restrictions, just pure choice.
Exactly.
But Hegel, he sees it differently.
Okay.
He makes a distinction between what he calls negative freedom
Good for you.
and positive freedom.
Interesting.
So negative freedom is that basic feeling of not being held back,
Okay.
having options, making choices.
It's like freedom from something.
Exactly. Freedom from something.
So negative freedom is like, I'm free because no one's stopping me from eating this whole cake right now.
Exactly.
Really?
But for Hegel, true freedom, what he calls positive freedom,
Positive freedom.
it goes much, much deeper.
Okay.
It's about realizing our full potential.
Okay. As rational beings.
As rational beings,
It's the freedom to do or become something.
So positive freedom, it's not just about having choices.
No, it's not enough.
It's about using those choices to, aim for something bigger, more meaningful.
Precisely. For Hegel, positive freedom is about aligning our individual will with the universal will, the Geist that drives history.
Okay, so it's less about rebelling against all constraints and more about, understanding
Yeah.
and even embracing our role in a bigger system.
You got it. And this is where Hegel's ideas about the state come in.
Okay, the state.
He argues that the state, a rational and just state, is actually what allows us to exercise this positive freedom most fully.
Hold on a second. I thought Nietzsche would be completely against that.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
Didn't he see the state as, a force that limits individual freedom?
You would think.
Yeah.
But here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about right replacing good?
Well, for Hegel, the state is the embodiment of right. It's where individual freedom is actually realized,
Okay.
not through, unchecked impulses,
Right.
but through laws and institutions
Okay.
that reflect the Geist,
The Geist.
the
Okay.
collective ethical principles of a society.
So the state, in its ideal form,
Yeah.
provides the structure
The boundaries?
within which individuals can, thrive and achieve true freedom.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like the state is the playing field
I like that.
and the rules of the game.
Okay.
They might seem restrictive at first,
Yeah.
but they're actually what allow us to play the game meaningfully
Right.
and, achieve something worthwhile.
You got it.
But what about our own personal desires?
Sure.
Our individual goals, ambitions?
Of course.
How do those fit into this whole idea of aligning ourselves with the Geist?
Hegel wouldn't say our individual desires are irrelevant.
Yep.
He believed that individual fulfillment, it's a crucial part of a healthy society. But he'd argue that true fulfillment comes from recognizing
Recognizing what?
that our individual goals, they're best achieved within a framework
Within a framework.
of shared values
Okay.
and collective purpose.
So it's not about sacrificing our individuality for the state.
No, not at all.
It's about understanding that our freedom is tied to the well-being of the whole community.
Exactly.
We're all connected.
We are.
And this is where Hegel's concept of duty comes in.
Duty.
He sees duty not as something that, restricts our freedom,
No.
but as a key ingredient of positive freedom. Wait, duty? How can duty be freeing? Isn't that a contradiction?
It seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But think about it this way. Duty, for Hegel,
Yeah.
is about recognizing our obligations
Okay.
to others, to the community,
No.
and fulfilling those obligations willingly.
Willingly. Okay.
It's not about blind obedience. It's not about coercion.
Mhm.
It's about acting from this sense of shared purpose,
Right.
contributing to something larger than ourselves.
So it's I'm free to choose to do my duty.
Yes.
And in making that choice,
Mhm.
I'm actually realizing my true freedom
You're getting it.
because I'm acting in line with my, rational understanding of my place in the world.
That's the idea.
It's about harmonizing our individual will.
With those ethical principles.
Yeah, the ones that, underpin a just and rational society.
Exactly.
And that alignment,
Yeah.
that's the real source of, lasting fulfillment and satisfaction for Hegel.
That's what he believed.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
That duty and freedom aren't opposites,
They're two sides
but two sides of the same coin.
of the same coin. I love that.
Do you think Joe Rogan, with his focus on individual liberty,
Yeah.
would be open to this?
It's hard to say, but I think there's potential for a really interesting conversation there.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe is all about personal growth, self-discovery,
He is.
and Hegel's philosophy, even though it's complex and challenging.
Yeah, definitely challenging.
It ultimately offers a path to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
It definitely challenges those conventional notions of freedom we have.
It does. Yes, it does.
Okay, so we've got Socrates questioning the dialectic,
Uh-huh.
Kanye mistaking himself for the absolute idea,
Always a classic.
and Nietzsche kind of bristling at the idea of any system that might limit, individual expression.
Right.
So where does all of this leave us in terms of Hegel's overall vision of the state and its place in history? We've been unpacking Hegel's ideas, and honestly, it's like peeling an onion, There's always more to uncover.
So many layers.
We talked about the Geist,
Right.
the dialectic, his whole view of the state as the embodiment of right.
Mm-hmm.
Even this really nuanced idea of positive freedom through duty,
A lot to digest.
it's a lot to process.
It is.
So where do we even go from here?
That's a big question.
What's the main takeaway?
Yeah.
What do you really want listeners to grasp about Hegel?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand is this.
Okay.
Hegel believed that history isn't just a bunch of random events, it's a progression
A progression of what?
of the Geist
Okay, yeah.
on a global scale.
So it's like a grand narrative, a
Exactly.
story that keeps getting written.
Through the interactions of individuals, states, even whole civilizations.
Where each nation is like
Like a character in a play.
playing their part.
Yeah, and just like characters in a play, they have their own
Personalities.
unique characteristics, strengths, weaknesses,
Okay?
And they contribute to the whole evolution of the Geist through their interactions with each other.
So it's not about one nation being better than another.
No, not at all.
It's about how their differences.
Their interactions, their conflicts, cooperation, cultural exchange,
Yeah.
all of it.
Contribute to this bigger process of historical development.
Exactly.
Right.
And Hegel, he believed that this whole historical process, it's driven by the Geist striving for greater self-consciousness
So a deeper understanding of itself.
and its own potential.
That's a pretty it's a pretty big concept.
It is.
He's almost suggesting that history has a purpose,
A direction.
even if we don't get it right now.
That's exactly what he's suggesting.
Okay.
And I know this might sound deterministic to some people.
Everything is decided.
Well, yeah, we have no free will.
Yeah.
But that's not really what Hegel was saying.
So how do we square this idea of a purposeful history
Right.
with our own choices and actions?
That's the question.
Where's the freedom in all of this?
Well, remember our talk about positive freedom?
Yeah.
For Hegel, true freedom isn't about just following every whim we have.
Okay.
It's about aligning our will
Our individual will.
with the universal will, with the Geist.
So understanding our place in this grand scheme of things
Exactly.
and acting in a way that pushes history forward.
It contributes to its progress.
Yeah. So it's not about getting rid of our individuality.
No.
It's about understanding that our freedom is tied to
To our interconnectedness.
recognizing that we're part of this bigger story.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And this is where I think Hegel's philosophy gets really powerful.
It is powerful.
He makes us think beyond just our immediate desires.
Or a little bubble.
Yeah, and consider our actions in this broader historical context.
It really expands our perspective.
Which isn't always easy.
Excellent.
It's hard enough just figuring out what I'm having for dinner tonight,
Right.
let alone grasping the meaning of history.
And our place in it all.
Exactly.
It's a huge task.
And that's why, engaging with Hegel,
Yeah.
even though it's challenging,
Oh, it is.
it's so rewarding.
Absolutely.
He makes us confront these huge questions,
The big ones.
grapple with complex ideas,
And push ourselves.
to try to understand ourselves and the world better.
Exactly. That's the whole point.
And that's really what this whole deep dive has been about.
It has.
It's not about becoming Hegel experts overnight.
No one expects that.
It's about opening our minds up
to new ways of thinking.
to different perspectives
Yeah.
on these big questions that have always fascinated humans.
The questions that keep us up at night.
And even if we don't agree with everything Hegel said,
And I think our philosophical guests have made that clear.
yeah, they definitely had their own opinions.
They did.
His work still gives us a really profound and thought-provoking framework.
A framework for understanding the world, ourselves, our place in it all.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you, the listener, to keep exploring Hegel's ideas.
Wrestle with them.
See how they connect with your own experiences.
Your own beliefs.
And maybe
Just maybe.
this exploration will help you understand your own role.
In this grand unfolding story of the Geist,